Once there was a man named Bert who had the thought that his wife, Peg, wasn't hearing as well as she used to, and thought she might need a hearing aid or two. He wasn't quite sure how to talk to Peg about this, so he decided to ask the family doctor. And when he did, the doctor said, well, there's an informal test you could use, and this might help to see how good Peg's hearing is. First, when you're both at home, go about 30 feet away from where Peg is and say something in a normal conversational tone and see if there's a response. If there isn't, then go to 20 feet away. Once again, say something in a conversational tone and see if there's a response. And once again, if not, then go 10 feet away and do the same thing. Bert said he would try that. So late that afternoon, while Peg was preparing dinner in the kitchen, Bert went about 30 feet away and said, Peg, what's for dinner? No response. Then he went to a place 20 feet away. Once again, honey, what's for dinner? No response. Then he went to a place 10 feet away, just outside the kitchen. Peg, honey, what's for dinner? Again, nothing. Then Bert went right up behind Peg and for the next, and again said, Peg, honey, what's for dinner? At that point, she turned around and she said, for heaven's sakes, Bert, for the fourth time, we're having chicken. My message this morning is finding God and good in everything. God or spirit isn't only in our life when things are going well. God is present in our challenging times as well. The Dalai Lama once said, when everything is falling apart, it's so something new can be born. This message was inspired by the story in Genesis of Jacob's ladder. Here it is, as found in Genesis 28. Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. Then he had a dream that night in which he saw a ladder resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven. And the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. When Jacob awoke in the morning, he said to himself, surely God is in this place, and I didn't know it. In Jacob's day, people believed that their gods were local. In other words, they believed their God lived where they lived. So Jacob was shocked to realize God lived in the wilderness too. Isn't that just like our lives? We're sure that God is present when things are happening that we like. But what about when things don't go as we had hoped? Let's look at the metaphysical or inner meaning of the Jacob story. In unity, that we say that metaphysically, the Bible is his story and her story, the story of our spiritual growth. In our spiritual evolution, Jacob represents our belief in cleverness. In this stage, who is cleverest is a step up from the stage of who is the physically strongest, which is represented by Jacob's slightly older brother Esau. Jacob had spent his entire life involved in trickery. For example, he fooled his father into giving him Esau's birthright. In the latter story, Jacob was on his way to Haran. The name Haran means elevated. exalted. This represents us moving to a higher state of consciousness where we look for spiritual and not mental solutions. So this is us shifting from relying on cleverness to relying on spiritual principles and the Holy Spirit's guidance for success in life. In Jacob's dream, excuse me, angels are ascending and descending on a ladder to heaven. The word angel means messenger. Angels ascending are prayers. Angels descending on the ladder, that's our guidance. In the story when it says, when Jacob awoke in the morning, metaphysically, this means when the light dawns on us. Then, like Jacob, we say, surely God is in this situation. Surely good is in this problem, and I didn't know it. Alan Cohen, in one of his newsletters, talked about a time when he was working with a client, a coaching client, and the coaching client wanted him to find a new job. This man had been fired from 5 accounting positions that he'd had, and yet he was asking Alan to find him another position as an accountant. So Alan said, I asked him the obvious question. Do you actually want to be an accountant? The man said, well, no, I don't, but I need to pay the bills. Alan asked him, well, what would you rather do? Is there something you'd love to do? The man said, well, what I'd love to do is I'd love to take my photography hobby and make it a business. And Alan thought to himself, now we're getting somewhere. So he worked with and coached the man into how can I eventually get myself to a position where I'm actually making my living based on photography, even if I have to start out having a part-time job as well. And that's exactly what they did. No matter the problem, it's important that we look for the gifts which life and spirit are offering us through it. When the light dawns on our mind, we also say, surely God is in this experience, and I didn't know it. Surely good is in this experience, and I didn't know it. Dr. Gary Simmons, in his book, The Eye of the Storm, quotes a teacher that he had many years ago who said to him, no one, is against you. You have no adversary in your life. There is nothing in the universe that is against you or your purpose. The teacher said, you must leave this room knowing only one thing, that nothing is against you. Nothing opposes you. Any experience you have to the contrary is evidence that your mind is rooted in separation and illusion. The teacher continued, if you resist what seems to resist you, you strengthen the hypnotism that keeps you in bondage to your past and makes predictable your future. Then he said, make your path be about proving that no one and nothing is against you, and you will discover what wholeness really is. And Dr. Simmons said later on in his book, our soul seeks to move us into those areas of life where our full potential has yet to be discovered. Byron Katie is another teacher that I love. She said this, everything happens for us, not to us. And until we can see everything as our friend, our work here isn't finished. I think that's so profound, I'm going to repeat it. She said, everything happens for us, not to us. And until we can see everything as our friend, our work here isn't finished. Then we have Emma Curtis Hopkins. Emma Curtis Hopkins was the teacher of our founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, as well as Emily Cady, one of our original teachers and authors. She was also the teacher of Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science. One day, Emma was facing something in her life which was vexing her. And finally, here's the story goes, she stood up one day, put her hands on her hips, and said, "This too is good. This too is God. This too is for me. And I insist, I demand to see the blessing in it." Several years ago, I was the transitional minister for a certain Unity ministry. I was there for a year. And during that time, a woman came to see me. And she said she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And she wanted to know what she could do to spiritually work to support her own healing. So I said to her, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to make a list of what I have received from having cancer. I'm going to share with you not all, but some of what she wrote. She said, "I appreciate that this condition gave me the gift of time for inner growth. Probably nothing but a serious illness would have forced or encouraged me to stop and focus on inner work." She said, "I stopped involvement in some activities I didn't really like anyway. And I stopped interacting with some people I didn't enjoy being with. This condition gave me permission to focus on me, and I chose to do that with divine guidance. This condition gave me paid leave from work. My illness gave me the opportunity for lots of self-work, release of old baggage and anything that was unlike love. It helped me release my children to the Holy Spirit and feel good about that. This illness allowed me to get better at receiving expressions of love. I learned more about being a gracious and grateful receiver of attention and expressions of love. I let other people help me. This illness gave me the opportunity to work one-on-one with Reverend Phil to make a treasure map of my desires and goals, perfect inner and outer health. I actually changed doctors," she said, "several times during this illness. I found I had the ability to know when I was in the wrong place and act upon that knowledge. This was not easy for me. I plan to apply that kind of action based on my inner sense in all parts of my life. My wants and efforts helped me to create a Reiki training class. I'm now a certified Reiki level 1, and so are my sister and daughters. I began journaling as a result of my illness. I began journaling at the discovery of my tumor. Journaling is a wonderful addition to my life. I now write in an appreciation journal every day. Being closer to my husband and children due to this experience is something I greatly appreciate. All the expressions of love, all the candid conversations, our need to share our fears and our love, cherishing our time together. And finally, she said, I am experiencing the power of positive prayer." My own spiritual evolution has included learning that life doesn't happen to me, it happens through me. It started at my very first Unity class over 50 years ago, when the minister said two things that went zing in my body. The first one is, we don't need an intermediary in order to go to God, because God is right within us. And the second is, thoughts are things. They're a form of energy, and they are constantly creating our experience of life. I knew that was true immediately. Then I fought it for a couple of years before finally accepting it. And over 50 years later, it's still the truth for me. Later on, I learned this from A Course in Miracles. Everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. This means that everything in my life is my idea. So no matter what shows up in our life, which means no matter what we create, like coughing right now, there is a gift in it for us. Course in Miracles says there is no such thing as an accident, and chance plays no part in God's plan. About 20 some years ago, I wrote a prayer program called the Prayer of Transformation. One of the steps says this: God is always creating my life through me, constantly giving me what I ask for through my deepest beliefs and emotions. And then it says, I am now willing to see and receive the gifts I want from everything that I create. No matter what shows up in our life, it's here because there's a gift we want to receive from it. Richard Bach, in a book I read many, many years ago, Illusions, said, every problem comes to us with a gift in its hand. The sooner we open our mind to that truth, the sooner we can receive the gift. As I was working on this message, I came across a story of a woman named Sally, who at the age of 50 was rushed to the hospital one day, being violently ill. And while she was at the hospital, after tests were done, it was discovered that her liver was failing, and that if she didn't get a new liver, a liver transplant within a few months, she wouldn't be here anymore. Fortunately, a liver was found. The transplant happened. Everything was going very well for a year. But when she then went in for a routine checkup, the doctor said, I'm sorry to tell you this, but this liver is failing too. You're going to need another transplant. And so they talked about seeing if they could arrange that. On her way home from the clinic, Sally thought about the woman who was sitting next to her in the waiting room, who was there because she was needing a third liver, a third time. For the second time, she was going to need a liver transplant. And Sally said this woman was the most negative, the most critical, the angriest person she thinks she ever met. And then she remembered that in Chinese medicine, our organs each are associated with a certain emotional state. And the liver is associated with anger. Sally thought to herself, who am I angry at? And the first thought that occurred to her was, I'm angry at me. She was constantly belittling herself, constantly telling herself she wasn't doing it right. She wasn't doing it good enough. She was never good enough. Right then and there, Sally decided to fast as best she could from negative self-talk, from self-criticism. And starting then, to devote 10 minutes a day to an inner experience of focusing simply on loving herself exactly as she was, which she did. 3 months later, when she went back for the final test to see whether she, just before the new liver was supposed to be transplanted, she got to the doctor's office, they did some more tests, and they said, Sally, this is a medical miracle. Your liver is completely healed. There's no need for another transplant. That was 17 years before I read that this story was told to me. This is another example of things aren't happening as our enemy. They're happening because there's something we want to receive from each one. Our purpose here on earth is to become the Christ being we've always been at our core. A full-on expression of divine love, divine power of creation, divine wisdom, and divine aliveness. The Apostle Paul said, all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to God's purpose. In unity, we know that God's purpose is for all of us to become Christ beings. So I'm going to ask you to think of a problem that you've been facing in your life. Can you think of one? And then I'm going to ask us all to join Emma Curtis Hopkins in affirming. I'm going to say this all together, and then I'm going to take it piece by piece and ask you to affirm it with me. Here's what she said. This too is good. This too is God. This too is for me. And I insist on receiving the gifts it has for me. So here it is, piece by piece. First of all, this too is good. Together. This too is good. This too is God. Together. This too is God. This too is for me. Together. This too is for me. And I insist on receiving the gift it has for me. And I insist on receiving the gifts it has for me. Have a wonderful week receiving the gifts from all of your creations. Namaste.